We are here at Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. I'm Erin. I am the director of the Berkshire Cultural Resource Center, and we are so pleased to have our critic today with us, Erin Goldberger. And she is the owner of New Release Gallery in New York City, and focusing on mostly working with emerging artists, which aligns very much with what we do here at MCLA. And we are really fortunate to have her here today as our critic to talk with our three artists. So thank you so much. And I'm going to start off with the three questions that we ask all of the gallerists that we invite. We can provide a little bit more transparency for our artists and give them the insight that they seek. So, as you do this often in your line of work, give artists feedback, look at their portfolios, what do you feel the role of the portfolio review or the studio visit is for galleries and gallerists?
Yeah, I think the studio visit is integral, and obviously it's, right now is an interesting time for studio visits. I've done several on Zoom and FaceTime and stuff, which has been, better than nothing. But
right.
But I think like for me, it's obviously partly getting to know the work, but it's really getting to know the artists, because you're going on your first date.
Exactly.
So I think for me, it's, seeing how we vibe, how, just like and then getting to know like also just their practice. And again, not just seeing, okay, here's like these 3 paintings that I finished or this sculpture I finished, really seeing the process, which I think is super important, again, in getting to know the artists themselves.
Right.
So,
right.
So yeah, I always want to do, a visit right away to get to know them. And then obviously I think if we're, actually working on a show, I think it's super important if you're able to. I've obviously worked with artists that are, across the country or in Europe
right.
where you can't get that. But kind of, going with them on the journey for if you're actually working on a show too, which is super important. But yeah, I think it's getting to know the person, because I think when, there's a lot of dealers who just see something, someone, tells them about it, and then they're like, okay, I need that, I have to.
Right.
That's not part of a relationship that I want to have with the artist. So.
Right. What I love most is what you pointed out, which I think is really critical, is the understanding of the relationship. Mm-hmm. It is not just about transactions, but it really requires a relationship in order to help an artist not just create a show, but establish and sustain a career. It's not just this one-off. And I think it does create a certain amount of, of relationship building and an understanding, but also that it has to gel. It doesn't just.
Right.
I'm sure you've had situations where it didn't gel, but you still had to do it. But
oh yeah, for sure. And but I also think like, I don't know, I am not an oil painter, and I'm not a screen printer, and I'm not a bronze sculpture maker. Like, I don't know all the way things work. So I think it's super important to understand some of the more like intricate processes that artists work with. Like, again, unless it really is just like, okay, I got some oil paint and I'm doing this. And even then I'm still not understanding like your underpainting and your, all this stuff. So I think in order for me to then be able, if we're moving forward, either way, it's good to educate myself. But if we're moving, I want to be able to speak about your work to friends, press, collectors, in an intelligent way. So I think that's also super important too. But yeah, and I think also going along with like getting to know them as an artist, like, and building that relationship. I think, there's different relationships I have as far as, some artists might say, hey, do you think this painting is done? Do you think this? And that's the kind of relationship that's really exciting, and not always what I expect at all. But I do have relationships like that where we're really at this level where, they trust that I know their process and I do know their art. So I think there's so many different kinds of studio visits at this point too that I have,
Yeah. So good. That leads us into our next question. So say you're doing, probably for our purpose, the initial studio visit. What is it that you're looking for when you have that initial conversation or visit?
Right. So I guess, yeah, first I'm just trying to understand the work, because most likely I've only seen it on my phone or Instagram, or, maybe someone has suggested something to me, but most likely I'm seeing it for the first time in real life, or maybe I've seen, you know, one or two in a show, a group show, or
right.
a show, who knows. So, so I guess I'm looking to see what it feels like in real life first, if it is something that, you know, 'cause again, like there is stuff that maybe online I'm like, like it's fine. And then I go there and I'm like, wow, this is really speaking to me. I like them. This is, and other things where I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I get there and I'm like, oh, not for me, you know, cool.
Right.
You know, I think it's, again, like sensing the vibe, seeing how I feel about the work in person. And then, again, like getting to know them. And then just kind of seeing like what they're, you know, what they're getting to know them in, like, you know, what their history is and what they're planning for. I'm always, you know, if someone's working towards a solo show at another gallery, I'm not trying to like, you know, be like, okay, never mind, cancel that. Like, getting to know like, you know, what they've been doing with their art career so far. You know, and a lot of times it is an artist that probably knew another artist. So we have mutual kind of friends in common, mutual art in common, maybe another dealer in common somewhere else. So if I'm in LA, it might be someone who's suggested me look at them, who maybe has a gallery in LA, but is interested in them showing something in New York. So there's a lot of different relationships, I think, too, and just getting to know kind of what they're looking to do, you know?
Right.
You know, I've definitely gone on some visits where someone's like, I want to work for, I need 6 months where I'm just really excited. I'm back in the studio and I'm working, you know? So just kind of getting like gauging where they're at too. But I think a lot of times my visits are prompted by me wanting to do something. So it is kind of seeing like, is this something that's going to work? And a lot of visits are probably more so group shows where I'm like, okay, I have this theme. Does this work make sense within the theme that I'm thinking of? So that works too. And then, so I think that's also like my agenda each time I think is totally different. And sometimes they've changed too. Like I might've gone thinking I was doing one thing and then it's like switched. So that's exciting. And I miss doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny because you make me think about like a lot of times, I'm sure, especially artists who are just starting out, I hear a lot of like kind of a certain amount of disappointment because they're thinking that something's going to happen like immediately, like so visiting, but I never heard from them again. You know, and it's like 3 years later, and, you know what I mean? But do you find that, or I don't know of in that nature, but I'm trying to really help artists to understand that a visit doesn't guarantee a meet, but it's important to do these.
I think I like catalog everything, and like I definitely have gone back to people you know, later, like, okay, nothing really, you know, I don't feel that there's maybe a fit for like a solo right now, nothing's really making sense for a group show, but like I'm cataloging you in my Rolodex in my head, and and then, you know, hopefully we can get back to it. So I think like I mean, I never want to like do a visit and like disappoint anyone, so I would never be like, oh, we're gonna do something, and then like, you know, because that's awful. I've also, you know, and that could be reversed too, where an artist could be like, yeah, definitely, and then you're like, hey, and they're like, I'm good, thank you, I have other plans. So I mean, that's happened to me. But no, and I think knowing their expectation that like this is exciting that you're getting a visit from someone, and you know, I also think like I don't get as many as I would like of just people inviting me. And I totally get that that's like nerve wracking and probably think like I would say no, but I think, you know, I think sometimes younger artists, if they had met you somewhere and then think, oh, that would be a nice, like, I think I get very like, you know, I feel very excited when someone, cause it's mostly me being like, hey, what's up? Like, can I come over? But yeah, I think just knowing like, sorry.
Yeah. No. I think that's a really good point. And so, and I like that you addressed that there's an equal amount of anxiety on both sides, you know, because I've heard, they could be really well-established artists like, oh yeah, I don't want to, I'm like, really? I didn't go up to you because you know, but that there is like an amount of anxiety about, what the expectations are.
Yeah.
That's coming.
And they're, you know, you're getting like, it is nerve-wracking. I don't know where I'm going into a new building, or maybe I've been in this building before, but I haven't been in your studio. And so you're inviting me into your, you know, so I think there's always a little bit of nerves in the beginning, but then it usually just ends up being such a nice time.
Right. Exactly. So in the midst of all of this, what is something that you would offer an artist in terms of advice? Those who are looking to just advance their career, they might be looking for representation. Is there a tidbit, a good nugget we can offer them?
Yeah, there's probably a lot. I think some of it's luck, honestly, unfortunately. Right place, right time with certain people.
Right.
But I think it's about, I mean, an artist is an isolating work and you're alone in your studio, and I think that's, great, and a lot of my alone time is like my best time to get work done.
Right.
But I also think in the art world, being somewhat social is an asset in terms of not going to some like crazy party every weekend, but going to openings, or even just going to see gallery shows, I think is like super important in terms of just if you're in a location that can exist, because then people do recognize each other and get to know each other, and you just never know if then there's someone that just introduces you to someone else. That's just one kind of part of it. I do think, I pay way more attention if I'm meeting an artist in person, or someone's like, hey, Erin, you need to meet this person, rather than I'm getting kind of like a blind email that can totally it's not even ignored. It's like, I actually look at every single link or like PDF someone sends me, but I'm not looking at it maybe that week. And I might not just feel the need to respond right away, and then it gets lost in the shuffle, and it's just you're not remembering the person the same way as maybe you met them in person. So I just think it's like good to kind of within the art world try to just get out there a couple times a month, maybe. Now obviously right now is very weird now. But yeah, I think just like engaging within the art world, I think that also can be intimidating and very hard. And I remember like being very young and thinking it was crazy that an artist would be at their own opening. I was like, really? Why? Like, that's crazy. So that kind of thing. But I think a lot of artists that I visit are recommendations from other artists. So having that community, I know that could be hard, especially if you didn't maybe do like an MFA or something like that. But I think just having that, some sort of those connections sometimes could be really successful. But otherwise, I think if you reach out, if there's a certain place that you find that is like very connected, then, I think when you're able to visiting that specific gallery or museum or whatever is good just to kind of get in there.
Out there. Yeah.
But I think every journey is so different. I think every single artist would tell you that they've had a different way of meeting me. And more established artists, I think probably, each journey is like so different. So I think, but I think just educating yourself every day and what's happening and getting out there if you can. And
yeah. I think that's good advice, because I think it's easy to be so focused on the production and the making that often you forget how all of this works, works like it has to be. And I try and stay away from this whole idea of self-promotion. No, it's really just, it's like any other, I don't know, any other sort of profession. Networking plays a huge role in, again, going back to the first question about, you said that this is really about establishing relationships. And I think that's a good point. That's the way to do it. Thank you so much for that information. And I think, of course, our artists are going to be so excited about, obviously, getting a chance to get your feedback, but also that we'll be able to share this with our general public and get